There are nights at Hogwarts when the castle feels almost alive in its quietness, when the soft glow of lanterns resting against ancient stone gives every corridor a warm, amber heartbeat. Tonight is one of those nights, calm, unhurried, wrapped in a gentle breath of cool air drifting in from the mountains. If you listen closely, you might hear the distant call of an owl or the soft rustling of enchanted trees swaying at the edge of the forbidden forest. And if you were to step outside for just a moment, you'd see the lake shimmering like dark silk, mirroring the stars above. This is the night our story takes place, a night meant for peaceful wandering, slow breaths, and small mysteries that whisper rather than shout. A night where the moon hangs low and welcoming over the towers of Hogwarts, especially the tallest one, the Astronomy Tower. A quiet, ancient place where students usually gather with telescopes and notebooks, but tonight, something else lingers there, something gentle, something curious. A presence that has been waiting for someone to notice. But before we climb the winding stone stairs to discover it, allow yourself to settle into this moment. Let the soft hum of Hogwarts life at night wash over you, the distant crackle of fireplaces, the slow sway of floating candles, the warm creak of wooden staircases shifting gently as though sighing in their sleep. Every corner of the castle seems to whisper, "Welcome. You're safe here. You're meant to be here." Our tale tonight is a calm one, full of soft magic and slow moments. There will be mystery, but the sort that feels like a warm puzzle rather than a danger. There will be wonder, but the gentle kind, like watching moonlight ripple across the floor, or hearing a distant melody you can almost recognize. And at the heart of it all is the Astronomy Tower, standing like a silent guardian above the sleeping castle. But before we begin, take a moment to breathe in the cozy stillness of this enchanted night. And if you enjoy calm journeys through magical places, if stories like this help you relax, unwind, and drift off gently, then feel free to like this video, subscribe for more soft Hogwarts tales, and explore other sleepy stories whenever you feel the need to escape into a world of quiet magic. Tonight, Hogwarts welcomes you into one of its gentlest mysteries. A shadow has been seen moving across the Astronomy Tower, not frightening or dark, but soft and almost thoughtful, like a silhouette made of moonlight. It doesn't belong to any student or teacher. It comes and goes, leaving behind a faint shimmer in the air and a curious stillness that only seems to appear at night. And so our story begins with a peaceful castle tucked beneath a star-drenched sky, corridors glowing with candlelight, and a quiet shadow waiting patiently in the tallest tower, waiting for someone who might understand its silent message, waiting for someone curious enough to climb the stairs, and perhaps that someone is already awake, preparing to step into this soft, moonlit mystery. On this calm and silvery night, when most of Hogwarts rests beneath warm blankets and soft dreams, one student is still awake, not out of mischief, but simply because sleep hasn't quite found him yet. His name is Harry Potter, and though he is no stranger to unusual nights, this one feels different in a way he can't fully explain. There is no fire in him, no urgency, just a quiet curiosity humming under his skin, like a gentle invitation he can't ignore. Harry sits at the edge of his bed in the Gryffindor dormitory, the room dim except for the faint glow of moonlight slipping through the tall arched windows. Ron Weasley lies nearby, asleep and snoring softly, the kind of snore that rises and falls like a slow, comfortable tide. Neville is curled up tightly, mumbling an occasional sleepy word. Seamus has kicked off his blankets again, and Dean, in the far corner, dreams soundlessly. Harry gazes at them with fondness, feeling the warm comfort of friendship even in the stillness of night. He knows their routines so well. Ron talks in his sleep sometimes. Neville twitches whenever he dreams about herbology class. These small details make the dormitory feel like a home, safe, familiar, and full of gentle quirks. But tonight, Harry feels a soft tug towards something else, something beyond the crimson drapes and wooden beds, something that seems to be calling from above. He pulls on his robes quietly, careful not to wake the others. The fabric whispers as it slides over his shoulders. As he fastens the clasp, he pauses for a moment, listening to the deep, steady breathing of his friends. Hogwarts feels peaceful tonight, more peaceful than usual, almost as if the castle itself is asleep. When Harry steps into the Gryffindor common room, he finds Hermione Granger already there, curled up on her usual armchair, a book resting in her lap. The firelight paints her hair in gentle amber hues. She looks up and offers him a soft, sleepy smile. "Couldn't sleep?" she whispers, her voice warm and low. Harry shakes his head. "Not really. You?" She taps the closed book lightly. "I kept thinking about the astronomy assignment for Monday, but now I'm just awake for no reason." They share a quiet moment, the kind where words aren't needed. The fire crackles softly, adding its own peaceful rhythm to the room. Outside the tall windows, the sky stretches across the night like dark velvet sprinkled with stars. Before Harry can reply, footsteps echo behind him. Ron has stumbled downstairs, hair sticking out in every possible direction, eyes as half closed. "Thought I heard voices," he mumbles, though he looks more asleep than awake. "You two going somewhere?" Harry hesitates, unsure how to explain the pull he feels. Hermione tilts her head, studying him with thoughtful curiosity. And then Ron, rubbing his eyes, adds with a yawn, "Well, if you're going, I'm coming too." And just like that, in the soft glow of the common room fire, the trio finds themselves drawn into another quiet adventure, one shaped not by danger, but by wonder. The night at Hogwarts had already settled into one of its unusually calm moods, the kind that wrapped the castle in a soft, velvety stillness. The fireplaces across the common rooms had burned low, their embers glowing faintly, like sleepy eyes refusing to close. A gentle breeze moved through the long stone corridors, carrying hints of parchment, ink, and the faintest echo of laughter from much earlier in the evening. It was the sort of night that encouraged rest, quiet reading, or staring dreamily through windows that framed the endless Scottish sky. Yet tonight, something subtle, something almost invisible, shifted in the very air of the castle. It began as most magical oddities at Hogwarts begin, quietly, unannounced, and in a place hardly anyone expected. Harry, Hermione, and Ron were returning from the library, their arms filled with books, and their footsteps softened by the castle's ancient rugs. The three of them had decided to review a few spells for their upcoming exams, though truthfully, Hermione was the only one truly studying, while Ron was thinking about food and Harry about Quidditch. They were halfway up the moving staircase when Harry paused. It was not unusual for him to stop suddenly. He often caught things others missed. But this pause felt different. "Did you hear that?" Harry whispered, his voice calm but curious as he looked upward. Ron froze and tilted his head. "Hear what?" "The castle makes noises all the time, mate. Probably Peeves dropping something again." But Hermione shook her head gently. "No, I heard it too. A sound, like a faint flutter, not wings, something slower, almost like a whisper of fabric." They stood together in silence, listening. At first, there was nothing, only the creak of the grand staircase shifting into place. Then, like a breath carried on a breeze, they heard it again, so soft, so thin, that it might have simply been imagination. A whisper, not words, just a sound like something brushing against stone. Hermione's brows knitted thoughtfully. It came from the direction of the Astronomy Tower. Ron's stomach tightened just slightly. Brilliant, middle of the night, and we're going to the tallest, creepiest spot in the castle. But Harry's eyes had already drifted upward toward the shadowy outline of the staircase leading to the Astronomy Tower corridor. Something, he didn't know what, pulled him. Not fear, not danger, but curiosity. The kind that felt gentle and strangely comforting, like the castle itself wanted him to follow. "Let's just have a look," Harry whispered, his tone low and calm. "If it's nothing, we go back." Hermione nodded, her voice soft. "And if it's something, it might be magical. We should at least understand what it is." Ron sighed but followed. "Right, but if I end up floating upside down again, I'm blaming both of you." The three of them walked slowly, quietly, toward the tower's entrance. The corridor leading to it was dim, but peaceful, lit only by the gentle glow of enchanted torches that flickered without ever burning down. Their warm light made everything appear softer, less threatening, more dreamlike. Halfway down the hall, Harry felt another faint sound, a delicate swish, like someone turning a page inside an empty room. The three slowed, steps syncing with the rhythm of their calm breathing. There was no rush, no urgency, only a quiet sense of being drawn towards something unknown yet serene. When they reached the first spiral staircase of the Astronomy Tower, something unexpected happened. The torches lining the wall flickered, not harshly, not as if blown by a sudden wind, but delicately, like candles greeting an old friend. A soft glow washed over the stone steps. It felt almost like the tower had woken up. Ron blinked. "Okay, that's new." Hermione touched the railing lightly, her fingers tracing the cool stone. "This is old magic, very, very old." She spoke softly, almost as if not to disturb it. "It's not harmful. I think it wants to show us something." As they stepped onto the staircase, the air grew cooler, not chilling, just pleasantly crisp, the way air feels before dawn. The higher they moved, the clearer the faint whispering became, but it wasn't frightening. Instead, it was soothing, almost melodic, like the rustle of parchment pages turned by someone who loved reading. Then Harry noticed it. A shadow, not cast by them, not cast by torchlight, not connected to any figure. It sat just ahead of them on the staircase, a softly blurred silhouette, like someone standing with their back to the trio. But it was not frightening or threatening. It looked simply lonely, still. Waiting, Ron whispered. Blimey, is it moving? The shadow didn't move aggressively. Instead, it drifted, slowly, calmly, around the curve of the staircase, almost like it wanted them to follow, but refused to rush them. Harry felt the air hum with gentle magic. Hermione exhaled softly. This isn't a spirit, it's a memory or a residue of a spell. She looked up with wonder, and it's leading us. The three followed quietly, their footsteps muffled by the thick stone of the tower. The shadow floated ahead, never too far, never too close, always moving at a pace that felt natural, peaceful even. And as they climbed higher, the whispering grew clearer, turning into soft patterns of sound that weren't words, but felt like thought, like emotion gently brushing against the walls. Finally, they stepped into the open platform at the top of the Astronomy Tower. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, stars shimmering like tiny lanterns. The moonlight painted everything in silver, giving the scene a dreamlike quality that made the moment feel suspended outside of time. And there, in the center of the platform, the shadow paused. It shimmered, softly, calmly, and then, from the very stones of the tower, they heard it. A whisper, shaped like a sigh, and then the shadow faded, not with a flash or a dramatic burst, but like a candle that simply decides its flame has told its story. Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood quietly, breathing, listening. The silence wasn't empty. It felt full, humming with unseen magic. Hermione whispered, "Something happened here, something old." Ron nodded slowly. "Yeah, and I don't think it's finished." Harry stepped forward, feeling the chill of the night brush his skin. Whatever it was, it's trying to show us something. And in that moment, the first breath of a new mystery filled the air around them. Calm, gentle, patient, like the beginning of a dream that hadn't yet revealed its meaning. Hermione exhaled softly. This isn't a spirit, it's a memory, or a residue of a spell. She looked up with wonder, and it's leading us. The three followed quickly, their footsteps muffled by the thick stone of the tower. The shadow floated ahead, never too far, never too close, always moving at a pace that felt natural, peaceful even. And as they climbed higher, the whispering grew clearer, turning into soft patterns of sound that weren't words but felt like thought, like emotion gently brushing against the walls. Finally, they stepped into the open platform at the top of the Astronomy Tower. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, stars shimmering like tiny lanterns. The moonlight painted everything in silver, giving the scene a dreamlike quality that made the moment feel suspended outside of time. And there, in the center of the platform, the shadow paused. It shimmered, softly, calmly, and then, from the very stones of the tower, they heard it, a whisper, shaped like a sigh, and then the shadow faded, not with a flash or a dramatic burst, but like a candle that simply decides its flame has told its story. Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood quietly, breathing, listening. The silence wasn't empty. It felt full, humming with unseen magic. Hermione whispered, "Something happened here, something old." Ron nodded slowly. "Yeah, and I don't think it's finished." Harry stepped forward, feeling the chill of the night brush his skin. Whatever it was, it's trying to show us something. And in that moment, the first breath of a new mystery filled the air around them, calm, gentle, patient, like the beginning of a dream that hadn't yet revealed its meaning. Ron reached the final curve of the spiral staircase, pausing for just a moment as the night air wrapped itself around him like a cool, soothing cloak. At the top of the tower, the stone archway stood like a silent guardian, watching over the vast night sky. A silver-blue glow spilled from beyond it, soft, pulsing, steady. Not bright enough to alarm, not dim enough to ignore. The Astronomy Tower balcony was bathed in moonlight as always, but tonight it shimmered as though dusted with frost. The air hummed faintly, as if the stars themselves were singing a secret lullaby. Ron stepped forward slowly, breathing in the crisp night as he gazed around. And then he froze, not in fear, but in awe, because the shadow he'd seen earlier was there, standing near the far edge of the tower, tall and still, shaped almost like a person, but stretched too delicately, too gracefully, as though woven from thin threads of light and darkness. It wasn't cold. It wasn't threatening. In fact, the closer Ron looked, the more he felt the gentle warmth beneath the moonlit air, as though the shadow carried a soft glow within it. And then something happened, quietly, beautifully. The shadow turned, not with a jolt, not with a sudden movement, but with a slow, drifting grace, like a curtain lifting in the wind. Its face, if one could call it that, was nothing more than a shape of softened starlight. No features, no eyes, yet Ron felt it looking at him. A warm hum washed through the air, and the blue shimmer pulsed brighter around them. Ron took a tiny step back, not out of fear, but out of surprise. His heart beat in a steady rhythm, not fast, not anxious. The presence of the shadow felt strangely comforting, as though it had been part of Hogwarts long before any student had ever walked these halls. The shadow raised an arm, slowly, softly. Ron blinked. A faint streak of silver unfurled from its gesture, drifting gently toward the center of the balcony. The streak shimmered, curling through the air in soft spirals, and then settled above the stone floor. And then a symbol began to form. A glowing outline appeared, shaping itself like a delicate constellation. Points of light connected with whisper-thin lines until a full pattern emerged, circular, intricate, familiar. Ron leaned closer. The symbol looked like something he had seen once in Professor Flitwick's classroom, a rune of old magic. Something about echoes, or memories, or messages left behind by the castle itself. The shadow's arm lowered. The air hummed again, deeper this time, as though encouraging Ron to come closer. He stepped toward the glowing sigil, feeling the hot warmth radiating from it. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't trying to trap him. The warmth was gentle, reassuring. He knelt down, running his fingers just above the glowing lines. The symbol pulsed once beneath his hand, as though responding to his presence. A soft breeze curled around him again. This time, it wasn't whispering aimlessly. It carried words, not spoken aloud, but felt deep, soothing, like a memory settling in the heart. Someone is missing. Ron stiffened, eyes widening slightly. He looked up toward the shadow, who remained still, its luminous edges trembling like soft candlelight. Missing someone in Hogwarts? Before he could question the thought, the breeze brushed him again, carrying another gentle whisper into his mind. Not lost. Forgotten. Ron swallowed. Forgotten? He thought of ghosts, but ghosts could hardly be forgotten. He thought of students, professors, creatures, but none of them could simply vanish from memory, could they? The shadow lifted its arm a second time. Another silver streak drifted into the air, this one different, smaller, rounder, more focused. It hovered before Ron, only inches from his face. And then it changed. The streak expanded, rippling outward like water disturbed by a single drop. It shaped itself into a smooth, shimmering orb. Inside it, faint images formed, indistinct at first, blurry and distant. Ron leaned in slowly. The image sharpened. A wand, long, polished, intricately carved. Ron frowned. Is that Ollivander's? He whispered softly. The orb pulsed with a low hum, almost like a yes. Ron blinked again, squinting at the tiny image. It didn't look like any wand he had seen in years. Then again, he had never explored the older records of wand lore. This wand felt ancient, peaceful, almost sleepy. Before he could say anything else, the orb shifted again, this time showing a tiny storefront, dusty and dimly lit, tucked between two crooked Hogsmeade buildings. The sign hanging outside was too smudged to read clearly, but Ron recognized the crooked chimney, a wand shop, but not Ollivander's, something older, forgotten. A faint whisper drifted again through Ron's mind, woven into the breeze like threads of invisible silk. A wand without a wizard. Ron exhaled slowly. A missing wand from a forgotten shop, connected somehow to a shadow that appeared only on this silent night. The pieces didn't fit, not yet, but they didn't need to. The story was unfolding gently, revealing itself like a slow sunrise. Ron turned toward the shadow again. "What do you want me to do?" he whispered, though the night swallowed his voice in its soft stillness. The shadow didn't speak, but it moved. For the first time, it drifted closer, graceful, slow, silent. Ron's breath caught, not in fear, but in wonder. It stopped just a few steps away, raising its hand to him. And then, something beautiful happened. The blue shimmer that had filled the tower rose into the air, swirling around Ron and the shadow like tiny fireflies made of moonlight. The breeze grew warmer, gentler, wrapping him in a feeling that reminded him of the Gryffindor common room fire crackling late at night. The shadow placed its hand softly, almost reverently, over Ron's heart, not touching him, just hovering there. And Ron felt the message, not in words, not in sounds, but in warmth and understanding. You can help. You were the one who listened. The wind quieted. The shimmer faded to a soft glow. The shadow stepped back, slowly dissolving into thin strands of silver until only one last ribbon of light floated in the air. It curled once, almost like a small bow of gratitude, and drifted upward into the star-bright sky. Ron remained standing, heart steady, mind gentle, breathing slow. He didn't feel shaken. He didn't feel afraid. He felt chosen not by a prophecy, but by a quiet moment of magic that Hogwarts had saved just for him. And the night, peaceful, shimmering, full of calm wonder, held him in its arms as he gazed out over the castle grounds, thinking softly to himself, "This is only the beginning." The night deepened around Hogwarts, settling softly like a quilt of starlight draped over ancient stone. From the high windows of the Gryffindor Tower, Harry, Hermione, and Ron could still see the faint glow coming from the Astronomy Tower, a gentle shimmer that looked nothing like firelight, yet nothing like wand light either, just a quiet, pulsing gleam, almost as though something was breathing up there. And even from this distance, the glow tugged at their curiosity in the slow, persistent way that dreams tug at sleeping minds, steadily, gently, without urgency. After all, nothing felt dangerous, only strange, only mysterious, only softly calling. They settled themselves by the round common room window, Ron with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders, Hermione curled with her knees tucked under her, and Harry leaning against the wooden frame, watching the night skies flicker with constellations that seemed unusually bright. For a while, none of them spoke. They simply watched the glow rise and fade, the way the tide ebbs and flows at the edge of a shore. It was strangely comforting, even though it remained unexplained. Hermione eventually broke the silence with a gentle whisper. "It almost feels alive." Her voice was soft, almost reverent, as if she feared waking someone. Ron blinked sleepily. "Alive? What, like a creature?" "Not a creature," Hermione murmured. "More like an awareness." Harry exhaled slowly, watching his breath fog the window. "It didn't feel threatening when we were up there. I mean, nothing jumped out at us." "No," Ron agreed, "and thank Merlin for that. One peaceful night is all I ask." Hermione smiled at him gently, resting her head against the seat cushion. "You keep saying that, Ron, but every peaceful night at Hogwarts seems to turn into something else." Ron yawned. "Don't jinx it." The glow pulsed again, but softer this time, almost muted, like it sensed they were sleeping nearby and didn't want to disturb them. Slowly, gradually, the glow dimmed until the tower sat almost completely dark again. Harry blinked. "Did it hear us?" Hermione gave him a thoughtful look, her mind visibly spinning its quiet gears. "It's possible the magic up there is responsive," she said, "but not dangerous, maybe curious, maybe it wants to be noticed." Ron rubbed his eyes. "Or maybe it wants to be left alone, like me after double potions." That made Hermione laugh lightly, the sound soft and warm. Ron, the glow wasn't groaning in misery. It was pulsing, Harry finished quietly, like a heartbeat. The three of them sat in silence again, letting Hogwarts hum around them. Somewhere deep in the castle, pipes groaned gently as warm air moved through them. A portrait yawned and muttered to itself. A staircase shifted, but oh so lazily, far slower than its daytime enthusiasm. Everything in Hogwarts felt half asleep tonight, even the magic. Eventually, Hermione stood, stretching her arms like a cat. "We should go back to bed. Thinking will be easier in the morning." But morning came, and the glow remained, not bright, not alarming, just present, gentle, persistent. The next day moved like drifting clouds, slow, calm, restful, in a way Hogwarts rarely allowed. Yet everywhere the trio walked, they began noticing things that felt a bit off. Not wrong, just curious. When they sat in the courtyard with books open in their hands, a breeze passed through, a breeze that didn't come from any direction they could pinpoint. A breeze that carried the faintest traces of whispers, not words, just impressions, like soft murmurs of parchment turning somewhere far away. Hermione looked up first. "Did you feel that?" Harry nodded. "It felt like someone walked past, but no one's here." Ron looked around slowly. "I swear something whispered right behind me." Hermione placed her quill down, eyes narrowing thoughtfully, but without tension, without alarm. "The Astronomy Tower," she whispered. "I think the magic there is spreading, not dangerously, but gently." "Like ripples," Harry said softly. "Exactly," Hermione agreed. They stayed in the courtyard a little longer, watching the sky shift from clear blue to a soft lavender haze. Clouds gathered in slow spirals, as though something far above the castle was drawing patterns in the sky. Around them, Hogwarts students moved with an unusual quietness. Not fear, not confusion, just a sense of serenity mixed with curiosity. Even the teachers seemed softer today, their footsteps quieter, their voices lower. Professor Flitwick hummed to himself as he crossed the courtyard. Madame Hooch paused mid-step to glance at the sky, like she felt something tugging at her senses, then continued on as though lulled by the atmosphere. Even Filch moved slower, his lantern swinging gently as if its flame, too, was drowsy. It was as if the castle itself exhaled in long, calming breaths. Hermione closed her book completely and looked at her friends. "I think we're meant to go back tonight," she said. Not fearful, not excited, simply aware. Ron groaned softly, and here I was hoping it was done. Harry smiled reassuringly. "It isn't pulling us, not like danger, it's inviting us." Ron muttered under his breath. Invitations shouldn't glow like magical beacons, but he didn't sound irritated, just resigned in that sleepy Ron Weasley way. They agreed to meet again after dinner. Evening settled quietly over Hogwarts, draping the hallways in candlelight that flickered like sighing stars. The long shadows felt gentler tonight, as though they stretched themselves carefully, mindful not to startle wandering students. By the time the trio reached the first steps of the Astronomy Tower, Hogwarts felt utterly hushed. The moon floated above the clouds like a softly polished pearl, and the breeze that rolled through the corridors hummed like a lullaby. Ron touched the banister. "Feels warmer tonight," he murmured, "even though the stones should be cold." "They're responding," Hermione said, with a soft nod. Harry glanced up the spiral staircase leading to the tower and felt, not fear, but anticipation. Calm anticipation, like the feeling of opening a book you've read before, knowing it contains a secret you never quite understood the first time. They began their slow ascent, each step echoing faintly, not sharply, but like the tower's interior was lined with soft fabric. Ron paused halfway and tilted his head. "Can you hear that?" Harry listened. Not footsteps, not whispers, something in between, a faint hum, almost melodic. Hermione's eyes widened just a little, a smile tugging at her lips. "It's harmonizing." "Harmonizing with what?" Ron whispered. "With us," Hermione said simply. "With our footsteps, our breaths, our magic." Harry didn't know how she knew, but he believed her instantly. The entire stairway felt as if it shifted subtly with their rhythm, matching them like a soft heartbeat, syncing itself with theirs. They reached the top, and the door to the Astronomy Tower stood slightly ajar, as though someone had cracked it open just enough to say, "Come in when you're ready." Harry pushed it gently. No creak, no tension, only silence, gentle, velvety silence. Inside, the glow was back. But now it wasn't a single light. It rippled across the walls like delicate blue threads, weaving slowly in the air. Not bright, not sharp, just serene. Ron exhaled. "It's beautiful." And it was, soft, moving, like quiet magic remembering how to breathe. Hermione stepped forward with the kind of awe she usually reserved for lost tomes or ancient spells. "It's not a creature," she said softly, "and not a spell. It's something in between." Harry took another step and felt a wave, barely noticeable, roll past him. A wave of warmth, calm, memory, because suddenly he felt familiar emotions drifting through him like echoes, not images, not thoughts, just feelings. The feeling of sitting by the fire, his first night at Hogwarts, the peace of lying in the hospital wing after a long day of Quidditch, the comfort of hearing Hagrid laugh, soft memories, restful ones, the kinds of memories that feel like warm blankets. Ron felt it too. His shoulders relaxed. "Blimey, is it supposed to be this soothing?" Hermione looked breathless. "I think it's showing us that it means no harm, that it remembers us somehow, or remembers something about Hogwarts." The glow pulsed again, but gently, as though nodding. Harry whispered, "Do you think it's alive?" Hermione shook her head slowly. "Not alive, but aware, a fragment of magic, a remnant." Ron frowned gently. "A remnant of what?" Hermione exhaled softly. "That's what we're here to find out." And the glow dimmed, as if accepting her answer. Calm, patient, gentle, the trio stood there on the edge of something ancient, yet soothing, feeling only warmth, only curiosity. No fear, no danger, just the quiet promise of a mystery waiting to unfold, and the gentle certainty that whatever it was, it had waited a very long time. And it could wait a little longer. The next morning arrived as softly as a whispered secret. The sky outside the windows of Hogwarts was washed with pale gold, the kind of early light that promised a peaceful day. Even the corridors seemed quieter than usual, as though the castle itself knew that something gentle and mysterious had begun to weave through its stones. Harry, Hermione, and Ron found themselves returning to the Astronomy Tower almost without speaking, guided by a shared curiosity that tugged at them like a soft breeze. They moved slowly, letting the castle's serenity wrap around them like a warm cloak. The portraits along the walls were yawning awake, stretching in their frames, their colors glowing gently in the morning light. A portrait of an old wizard with a fluffy white beard gave them a nod, his voice barely above a murmur. "Back to the tower, are you? Quiet night up there last evening. Too quiet." His eyes twinkled knowingly before he retreated into his painted armchair. Ron scratched his head. "Do you think he saw something?" Hermione gave a small smile. "Portraits see a lot more than they say, but I don't think he means any harm. Maybe he senses the same stillness we felt last night." Harry looked at the long carpeted hallway before them. Stillness, or someone watching. But his voice carried no fear, just soft curiosity. As they reached the spiral staircase to the Astronomy Tower, the air felt subtly different. Not colder, not warmer, just aware, the kind of aware you feel when you stand in a forest at dawn, knowing something is observing from behind the trees, not threatening, just present. At the top, the tower waited like a calm, ancient guardian. The vast sky stretched before them, soft blue, layered with clouds drifting like slow-moving dreams. And in the corner, under the shadow of the tall archway, the faint outline of the mysterious figure shimmered again before dissolving like morning mist. Hermione's breath caught softly. "It's still here, whatever it is." Harry moved closer, his footsteps light, respectful. Not dangerous. If it were, we would have felt panic. But this feels like someone trying to speak without sound. Ron pulled out a small magical biscuit from his pocket, one of the snack-like trinkets Fred and George made. "Do you think a snack offering would help?" he muttered. Hermione laughed quietly, the sound soft as tinkling bells. "Ron, it isn't a garden gnome." "What? Food builds trust." Harry grinned. "Well, leave it there. Nothing wrong with trying." Ron placed the biscuit gently at the base of the wall. For a moment, nothing happened, just the gentle hum of the morning wind. Then the shimmering returned. The outline came closer this time, more defined, almost choosing to be seen. Not a person, not a creature, something in between. A memory, perhaps. A fragment, a forgotten whisper of someone who once stood exactly here, staring into the same sky. Hermione stepped forward, her voice soft as a quill gliding over parchment. "If you're showing yourself, maybe you want us to understand." The outline trembled lightly, as though nodding. Harry closed his eyes for a moment, letting the quiet guide his thoughts. "I think it wants us to follow, not physically, but with intention." Hermione's eyes widened thoughtfully. "You mean, make a choice? Decide to see what it wants to show?" Ron shifted nervously, though with curiosity warming his expression. "All right, But if I start floating again like last year with that cursed chess piece incident, you won't, Harry said gently. This is calmer, like a dream trying to tell us something. Hermione placed a comforting hand on Ron's shoulder, and we stay together, always together. The three of them stood before the shimmering outline. It swayed like a silver feather in the breeze, and then, slowly, it drifted toward the old brass telescope in the center of the tower. That telescope had been there for centuries, older than even Dumbledore's stories. Dumbledore's stories. Its surface glowed faintly now, as though responding to the presence. Harry approached first, his movements steady. He touched the telescope lightly with his fingertips, and a gentle warmth spread through it. Not magical like a spell, but soothing, welcoming, like the touch of a forgotten hand. Hermione came next, placing her palms on the base. It feels alive, she whispered. Ron hesitated, then chuckled softly. Well, everything in this school eventually becomes alive. Might as well add the telescope to the list. He placed his hand too. Together, their combined touch awakened something. The telescope shifted, not physically, but in perception. It revealed not just the sky, but a layer beyond it. A soft, silvery glow, floating shapes, faint trails of stars that didn't exist in their world. Another Hogwarts, gentle, quiet, peaceful, superimposed against their own. A world of echoes. Hermione inhaled slowly. It's a memory realm, or a reflection realm, but not dangerous, just showing possibilities that have existed or will exist. Harry felt a deep sense of calm settling inside him. So the shadow isn't a spirit or a warning. It's a guardian, a guide, someone from the reflection realm. Ron blinked. Reflection realm, like a cosmic mirror world? Something like that, Hermione replied with a soft nod. A realm that's peaceful, almost dreamlike. The shimmering figure drifted forward again, touching the telescope with a faint pulse of silver light. Harry felt a thought, not words, but an impression, enter his mind gently. Thank you for listening. Hermione felt it too. Ron felt it last, a little surprised, but smiling softly. Harry whispered, "It's been alone for a long time, and we're the first ones to notice," Hermione added, "to pay attention." Ron breathed a slow sigh. "Well, seems like we made a new friend, a quiet one." The shimmering outline retreated slightly, almost pleased, almost relieved. It no longer felt like a mysterious shadow lurking in the tower. It felt like a presence that finally had company, finally had understanding. Now the choice lay before them. Harry placed his hand over the telescope again. Do we keep coming here, keep learning, keep exploring whatever this is? Hermione nodded softly. Yes, we explore gently, respectfully, like visitors in a dream. Ron smiled. And bring snacks next time. Spirits probably appreciate good food. They laughed, the warm sound drifting into the morning sky. The shimmering presence glowed brighter, happiness, in whatever form it understood. Harry admired the soft silver reflection. We choose to stay curious, to stay kind, Hermione added, and to listen, Ron whispered, and to help. The presence shimmered like moonlit water, then slowly faded leaving behind a peaceful stillness that wrapped around them like a blanket. They stood together in the calm morning air of the tower, choosing, quietly and deeply, to return, to explore, and to be part of something softly magical. Something that only those who listened gently would ever discover. The moon had climbed higher now, settling into a glowing throne in the sky as if it were watching over Hogwarts with silent affection. The castle had grown even quieter, as though anticipating something gentle yet important. Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood together in the soft silvery light leaking from the arched windows of the Astronomy Tower, each of them sensing that the answers they had been seeking all night were finally close, wrapped in the calmness of the midnight air. And yet, even as their eyes adjusted to the dim blue glow of the tower, that strange, shifting shadow they had been following seemed to pause, hesitating, as though waiting for them to approach with care. Harry took a small step forward, his breath steady and slow, trying not to disturb the serenity around them. "It's all right," he whispered softly, almost as if speaking to a frightened creature. "We're not here to hurt you." Hermione glanced at him, surprised by the gentleness in his tone, but also deeply understanding. She lowered her wand, even though it hadn't worked earlier in the night, and let her voice flow like warm tea. "We just want to know why you've been appearing. You don't need to hide anymore." Ron, despite being slightly nervous, nodded in agreement and leaned closer to his friends. "Yeah, whoever you are, we're here now. It's okay." At these words, the shadow shifted again, slowly this time, as though responding to the comfort of their voices. Instead of darting across the floor or stretching into the corners as it had done before, it rose upward gently, forming a softer, calmer silhouette than they had seen earlier. It didn't mimic a human shape now. Instead, it took the form of something soft, flowing, almost like a ribbon of starlight wrapped in darkness. The air around them became warmer, humming faintly, as though some invisible heartbeat pulsed in the tower walls. And then, gradually, a faint whisper drifted through the space, not frightening, not sharp, but peaceful and yearning, like the hush of turning pages in the library. Harry closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the quiet warmth around them. "Do you hear that?" he murmured. Hermione did. Ron did. It didn't sound like words, not fully, but like a feeling translated into sound, a longing, a memory, a gentle call waiting to be heard. The shadow drifted closer, stopping just before it touched their feet, and as it did, Hermione's eyes widened softly. "It's not dangerous," she whispered. "It's lost." Ron blinked. "Lost?" "Yes," Hermione replied calmly. "Or maybe forgotten." The idea settled over them like a blanket. Forgotten, just like the strange magical silence that had wrapped itself around the castle earlier in the night. Forgotten, like something once loved but left behind. Forgotten, like a spell that no one had used for years. And then, as if responding to Hermione's understanding, the shadow began to glow faintly around its edges, a dim silver halo that matched the moonlight. Its movements became slower, more readable, as though it finally felt safe enough to communicate. Harry stepped closer, crouching slightly, so he wasn't towering over the soft shape. "Are you trying to tell us something?" His voice was gentle, full of patience. The shadow shimmered once, twice, and then stretched toward the old stone wall beside them. Its form shifted into a thin beam of darkness that traced along the stones, stopping at a spot Harry had seen countless times, but never looked closely at. A small, circular indentation rested in the wall, so faint that it blended naturally with the ancient stonework. Ron frowned. "That's been here for ages, hasn't it?" Hermione knelt beside it, brushing the dust with her fingertips. "Yes, but look, there's something inscribed inside." Her voice softened further, as though she didn't want to disturb the quiet presence beside them. She leaned closer. "It's a rune, very old, older than the Founders." Harry tilted his head. "What does it mean?" Hermione traced the carving again, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light. After a long, thoughtful pause, she whispered, "It means remembrance." A wind, gentle and warm, swept through the tower, circling them in a quiet swirl. The shadow brightened, its edges smoothing into a calm ribbon of darkness, almost relieved. Harry felt something stir in his chest, a soft recognition, not of knowledge, but of emotion, something wanting to be remembered, something trying to exist again. And then Hermione gasped, not in fear, but with a soft realization. "I think this shadow isn't a person or a creature. It's a spell." Ron stared. "A spell?" Hermione nodded slowly, every word filled with wonder. "Yes, a very old spell, one that remembers the magic cast in this tower. And tonight, with so many spells failing around the castle, it must have awakened, alone, confused, searching for what it once belonged to." Harry looked at the glowing shadow, his voice warm. "So it wasn't trying to scare us. It just wanted someone to understand it." The shadow pulsed gently, like a soft nod. The realization washed over them like moonlight, calm, deep, and strangely comforting. Instead of a threat, they had found a fragment of forgotten magic, a harmless echo drifting through the castle, longing to be acknowledged. The silence that had covered Hogwarts earlier wasn't an attack. It was the castle trying to reveal something old and quiet, a memory of the magic that had shaped it long ago. Hermione smiled tenderly, her eyes softening. "You're part of Hogwarts, aren't you?" she whispered. The shadow glowed brightly, just for a moment, before dimming again in a peaceful, satisfied shimmer. Ron gave a small exhale, relief and awe blending gently. "Blimey, you're like a leftover spell, a peaceful one." Harry reached out his hand, not touching, but offering presence. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for trusting us." And almost like a bow of gratitude, the shadow dipped once, then drifted slowly upward, becoming thinner and lighter, rising toward the open archway where the moonlight pooled across the floor. For a moment, it hovered there, soft, luminous, before dissolving into the pale glow, becoming one with the night sky above the castle. Hermione placed a hand on the stone wall over the tiny rune. "It just wanted to be remembered." Ron nodded slowly. "And now it can rest." Harry looked out over the quiet grounds of Hogwarts, feeling a gentle peace settle over him. What a night, he whispered, not frightening, but meaningful. And as the three friends stood together in the moonlit tower, wrapped in the softest breeze of the night, they felt something deep and calming settle into their hearts. A quiet reminder that even forgotten magic longs for gentle understanding, and that in the stillness of Hogwarts, some mysteries exist only to bring warmth, not worry. The soft hush of night settled deeper over Hogwarts as Harry, Hermione, and Ron lingered within the Astronomy Tower, their breaths gentle and steady after the revelation they had uncovered. The mysterious shadow, once a stirring echo of an ancient magical guardian, had finally quieted, returning to the slumber from which it had awakened. Around them, the air seemed calmer now, as if the castle itself had released a slow, thankful sigh. A faint breeze drifted through the open arches, carrying with it the coolness of the night sky and the whisper of distant stars. The entire world above felt peaceful, wrapped in shimmering constellations that blinked softly like watchful eyes. Ron leaned against the stone railing, still gazing upward, as if he expected the sky to flicker again with unusual patterns. But now, the constellations were steady, their glow warm and reassuring. "Funny, isn't it?" he murmured, rubbing the back of his neck. "Something that's strange, something that powerful, and now it's just quiet." Hermione nodded, her curls gently shifting with the night breeze. Magic often settles once it's understood. It's fear that keeps it restless. There was a softness to her voice, a serene certainty that came not from knowledge alone, but from the deep comfort she felt within Hogwarts' ancient walls. Harry stepped closer to the railing, his hands resting lightly on the cool stone. Below, the castle courtyards glimmered in muted gold and silver hues, lanterns swaying gently without noise. It was as though the chaos of earlier moments had dissolved into something still and tranquil, like ripples fading on a lake after a pebble's fall. "I think," Harry said after a moment, "that the shadow wasn't meant to frighten us, just to be remembered." Hermione smiled at this. "Guardians often are. They don't ask to be seen, only understood." The three friends fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that needs no words. Their bodies relaxed, shoulders softening as the quiet of the tower wrapped around them. The night air held a gentle coolness, and even the faintest sound, the flap of wings from the owlery, the whisper of leaves below, seemed peaceful and far away. Eventually, Ron let out a small, sleepy yawn. "We should head back," he said, though his voice carried no rush, only a lingering calm. "McGonagall will have our heads if we fall asleep in class again." Harry chuckled softly. That might be worth it tonight. They took one last look at the sky, watching as a slow cloud drifted lazily past the moon. The earlier shimmer that had twisted the stars into strange, shifting symbols was now gone. In its place was a serene, silver glow that bathed the entire tower in a soothing, dreamlike light. When they stepped away from the railing and back toward the spiral staircase, the shadow beneath the great arch remained still, but it felt different now, no longer mysterious, no longer something hidden. Instead, It felt like an old story that had finally been told, easing itself back into silence. I wonder how many other secrets Hogwarts keeps, Hermione whispered as they began their descent. Probably a few hundred, Ron muttered sleepily. Hopefully none that involve climbing this many stairs again. Their laughter echoed gently in the stairwell, soft and buoyant, lifting and curling through the tower like warm mist. Step by step, the atmosphere shifted, not with suspense or tension, but with the gentle wind down that comes after understanding, after peace has settled, where curiosity once stirred. By the time they reached the corridor, the castle lights were dimmed, each lantern flickering like a drowsy heartbeat. The floors were cool beneath their feet, and even the portraits had settled into slumber, their figures resting beneath painted blankets and softly painted moons. As they walked back toward Gryffindor Tower, they spoke only in murmurs and small, fond whispers. Hermione reflected on the ancient guardian. Ron wondered how long it had been sleeping before tonight, and Harry simply listened, feeling strangely at ease. It was rare to uncover a piece of Hogwarts magic that wasn't dangerous or frightening, something that simply wished to be known. At the portrait of the fat lady, they paused. She was already sleeping, her head lolling gently against the edge of her golden frame, tiny snores escaping her painted lips. "Should we wake her?" Ron whispered. Hermione shook her head. "Let her rest. We can wait a moment." So they sat quietly on the steps, shoulders touching, the warmth of shared adventure settling into them like a blanket. The castle hummed softly around them, breathing, living, ancient, and endlessly comforting. For a long, serene moment, they simply stayed there, wrapped in the hushed magic of the night. And Hogwarts, in its own silent way, whispered back its gratitude. As the night settled fully over Hogwarts, the castle seemed to exhale a long, quiet breath, as if satisfied that its mysteries had been gently uncovered and its harmony restored. Soft moonlight touched the stone walls with a silvery glow, and the breeze drifting through the Astronomy Tower was warm and steady now, no longer carrying the strange pull or puzzling whispers from earlier. Instead, it carried only peace and a sense of comfort that slowly wrapped around the castle like a protective blanket. Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood together for a moment longer after the final discovery they had made, still thoughtful, but calmer now, their hearts lighter than they had been at any point in the long and curious night. The shadowy figure that had once lingered near the edges of their vision no longer appeared. Its purpose had been revealed, its gentle message understood, and the lingering mystery had softened into something warm, almost nostalgic, like a half-remembered lullaby. The trio turned back toward the staircase, their steps slow and unhurried. The corridors, though quiet, no longer felt empty. Instead, they felt familiar, almost welcoming, as though the old castle itself was guiding them gently back to the safety of their dormitories. Candle flames flickered softly in their brackets, the warm light dancing on the stone walls, creating little golden halos that moved with every shift of the air. There was comfort in every small sound, the gentle rustle of robes, the faint creak of a staircase, the soft hum of portraits settling into rest. Even Peeves, unusually quiet tonight, seemed to respect the stillness of the moment. Everything in the castle whispered one simple truth. The night was calm again. Ron stretched, sleepiness tugging at the corners of his eyes. "I don't think I've ever felt this tired," he murmured, though there was no complaint in his voice, only warmth. Hermione smiled softly as she walked beside him, and Harry's quiet nod carried the same sense of peace. When they finally reached the Gryffindor common room, the fire inside was still glowing gently, low embers painting the walls with a soft orange light. It felt like the perfect welcome after an evening of gentle wonder. One by one, they whispered goodnight, each stepping toward their rooms, ready to drift into dreams. And as the last ember glowed faintly in the fireplace, it felt as though Hogwarts itself whispered a final reassurance, a soft reminder that even in the quietest nights, even in the gentlest mysteries, the castle watched over them with a steady, comforting presence. So if you too are settling into rest now, let your breathing slow, let your mind soften, and let yourself drift gently into sleep, knowing you are safe, warm, and wrapped in the quiet magic of night. Sleep well, dear listener. The castle is peaceful, and so are you.